Welcome back to the course. In the last part, we were actually visualizing the path our objects are going to go to when they are like moving from one point to the other. In this point, we want to start and create a Bezier curve tool, which is actually calculating the difference between two curves, or actually between 3 points we are giving them. And then we're gonna interpolate the amount in between those, so they are actually rounding up between those three. There's one downside to this. It's not going to interpolate directly between 4 points, I would say, but still is actually an easy approach I want to talk to you about, and all is going to be working in between all those all the points we are actually going to create to. So once again, we are creating a quadratic Bezier curve tool for this, or actually just a calculation. So to calculate a quadratic Bezier curve, we need some points in, let's say, somewhere in world space. And we need to request these points and interpolate, or actually lerp, between those 3 points by 3 different, let's say, lerping functions. Let's start with the vector itself. So we create a function which is not of type void. In this case, it is of type vector3 because we return a vector3 in the end. So we call this function getPoint maybe, or whatever, since we want to understand what's the point where what's the current point we are requesting on that curved shape in between 3 indicator vectors. Okay, so and the 3 indicator vectors are going to be P0 for point 0. Then we need another vector. Those are all arguments, by the way, P1. Another vector, 3, P2. And in the end, we need a float. We call it T, which is standing for time. So this number t will always be somewhere between 0 and 1, and we will automatically calculate t by the points we want to interpolate in between two. So this is going to be our indicator later on. What we want to do with the getPoint function is rather simple. I'm gonna try to explain as best as I can so you hopefully understand what we are doing here. At first, what we want to do is I type this out one after another, and then we combine all of these. So we want to create, or we want to take vector3.lerp, which is a linear interpolation function between 2 points and a time float t. So we say vector3.lerp, and we want to lerp between 2 points with this first part. What we want to do is we want to take P0, so the first vector point we are interpolating, and then we take P1, and we take, of course, T as the parameter for timing. So this is the first part. Currently, I don't store this anywhere. It might draw some errors whenever we are going back into the inspector. Hopefully it's not happening, so be careful. So what we now want to do is we want to create another vector3.lerp, which is basically doing the same, but now we want to interpolate between P1, and P2. So the second and the third vector, and of course based on time t. Let me pretty quickly explain you what we are actually creating. So what we're gonna have is we have like all these 3 points already, and with our line in between these 3 points. And in this quadratic Bezier curve, we're gonna interpolate again between point 0 and point 1. We are lerping between them based on time t. When we are doing the same with P1 and P2, and we're gonna take the time points which are actually getting created in between, we're gonna get the quadratic curve. What is going to happen when we are having this last point, for example, and we're gonna take this handle point here and treat that as being point 1 over here, so we're gonna bring this here, we're gonna automatically get a curved shape over here. It's a bit off over here, so like that. So we would actually end up with a quadratic Bezier curve between 2 points, point 0 and point 2, and we're gonna use this as our handler. How does it work? We're going to have our input, point 1, point 2, point 3, which are going to be from our straight points, basically, we have already created from a straight path. And we implement a time t. Time t in this case is some number between 0 and 1. So like 0% and 100% is 0 and 1. Let's assume this one is now at point 3, for example. And this one should be at point 3 already. What's going to happen is that we are creating a line between those 2 points and treat that points or this line as an extra indicator. At the same time, we're going to have this purple point here, which is also making use of time t. So because we want to interpolate the outcome of the first and the second one, and we want to interpolate between those two or lerp between those two as well. So we get time t point here in the center, or basically we're going to take the same input. So we are moving this point also, but in this case between this calculated points, and we lerp between those two. What's going to happen when these are moving, like when the time is passing by, or for example, we have a good amount of different times or keys or points which we are using to interpolate between P1 and P2 and so on and so forth, then this is going to wander around. And what's going to happen when this is, for example, wandering here, because now this is maybe at point 8, the timer, we're gonna create automatically a curve depending on the density of our time value. So we're gonna talk about the density and the time later on. So in the end, we're gonna have something like that. So this is the timeline is going to be represented between P0 and P1. Now we're gonna split this up between, let's say, these 3 points. On the other side, it's going to be the same. So they are going to go over here. This is like 50%. This is like 30%, or maybe, something like that. This is going to be 80%. And the same is going to happen with the purple line in the center over here. So this is now going to be the point for this one. This one in the center is going to be for the center point over here is like the 50% between those lerped curve, as well as the last one is going to be like this one is going to be on 80% between those 2 points we have created, or we're gonna calculate in just a second. So what we now need to do is we now need to interpolate this one and this one by time t once again. So we're gonna have the quadratic curve in this case. So, and this is going to happen like once again vector3.lerp, and we have once again 3 parameters, so comma, comma, and the last parameter once again is time t. And of course we close the line with a semicolon. So what in the first one is going to land all of that except the semicolon. So I copy that and put this in the first slot. And copy the second one over here, copy, and put this in the second slot. And then we have the time t once again. So we lerp with within the first lerp vector, we lerp 2 times between the other ones. So we're gonna get the quadratic curve. What we want to do is we want to return that. Since we are requesting a vector, we get automatically a lerp vector based on P1, or P0, P1, P2, and time t. So this is basically how we actually request a point on a Bezier or on a quadratic Bezier curve between 3 points. In the next video, we're gonna make sure that we are automatically creating all these points in the Bezier curve vector, and of course draw some lines in between, and of course make use of the function we have created now.